Welcome to a new episode of In My Garage. This time we meet someone whose endless enthusiasm for classic cars has seen her use them in events all across WA, many of which she's had a hand in organising herself. She has a long history of classic car ownership and yet a modern approach to keeping them out on the road. Ann Stewart-Richardson, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you please tell us what's in your garage?
Thank you, Alex, and welcome. Well, have a look.
Unreal, look at that.
Well, you're familiar with this one, aren't you?
Absolutely, you've had it a long time, haven't you?
Yes, we have, absolutely.
1947?
1947. This was Ken's car. He restored it in 1995, and it's been in this condition basically since.
Well, it looks like you finished restoring it last week. I love the little changes that you both made to the car, like these aero screens. Do you drive it much with those?
Yes, we used to really enjoy doing that, and I can understand why the pilots after the Second World War got such an adrenaline rush when they were driving these little cars with the aero screens.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be the closest thing they would get to flying.
Yeah,
even though they weren't going very fast, they felt like they were.
That was the main thing, wasn't it? To feel like you were
feel
had
like
a bit
you
of
were.
speed.
Yes, exactly.
It's a real pucker, to use an old term, look, isn't it?
It is. It's a classic sports car of that era.
Yeah.
And even though there was different models before and after, they weren't a lot different. The TD was after this one, but not a lot of difference. And then the TF really started to change it after that.
There was something about TCs, wasn't there?
Yes.
That really clicked with people. What do you think it was about TCs in particular?
Well, people having the enthusiasm again after the war and money becoming a little bit more available, although the TCs were always the cheapest car, but it's the passion and the enthusiasm that they engender.
It's the appeal, isn't it? Because you can have as much fun just about in a TC that might cost $40,000 or whatever they go for, as you can have in maybe an 8C Alpha.
Absolutely.
Which has two more zeros on the end of that potentially.
Yes.
It might be a bit faster, but it's that the sports car recipe seems to be
the exhilaration.
Pretty much perfect in these, doesn't it?
Yes, they handle so well. They do have a certain amount of real grunt when you put your foot down. They were such a competitive car too.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the events that they were in England and were very successful with. So with these little cars, you could drive it on the racetrack, even in club events out here particularly. Well, the boys from the TC Owners Club will attest to that. Right. But amazingly, a lot of those chaps who now are into their 80s have bought their cars back or another car as well, and they are having as much fun today as they did way back. It transforms the years. So, they really are a special little car that becomes part of the family, really.
It's really unusual that a car that they only made about 10,000 of seems to have such a huge following. The enthusiasm for them now is as strong as it was when they were new, even stronger perhaps.
Yes, the passion seems to continue with the TCs particularly. Fortunately, we can still get parts for them or manufacture parts if we need to, but they are such an amenable car to be able to work on as well. You can maintain it yourself with a bit of support from others, and that's where it's so important to be involved with the club. And did you know that we now have 4 lady members in the TC Owners Club that own their own cars outright? And I think that's amazing.
That is. And since the passing of your late husband, it's amazing to see how well the community, in particular the TC Owners Club, has supported.
They certainly have.
You and all the other members in keeping their cars on the road.
Yes, and that's an important aspect. I'm in 3 clubs, I'm active in 2, but they all have different personalities. And certainly the MGTC Owners Club are like a big family.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the original members, 61 was their first meeting. They've been meeting every fortnight on a Thursday night at 9 o'clock since 1961. That's pretty amazing.
So how often do you get the car out these days?
Well, pretty regularly, in summer particularly. 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's lovely
Yeah.
because Ken's with me.
Yeah.
And although he passed in February in 2021, when I'm particularly in the TC, Ken's with me and helping me. I try and drive it with the same enthusiasm and verve.
So, Marianne, there were some tastefully made changes to the car when it was restored all those years ago. Can you take us through some of those?
Well, Ken wanted to put his own mark on the car, so he decided to put a walnut dashboard in it. Not quite the done thing, but he wanted to do that, and when Ken wanted to do something, he did it.
All right, Marianne, can we have a look under the bonnet?
Certainly. Come this way. Okay. There we go.
Well, that's not very standard in there, is it, Marianne?
No, it's not, Alex. It's not standard. However, we did have an issue with the motor at one stage, and the best way to resolve that was to put extractors on it, which, of course, needed a supercharger to go with it. So we now have a supercharger with beautifully tuned extractors, which are ceramic coated.
Yeah.
And it runs beautifully.
So you said recently you had an issue with the crankshaft.
Oh, yes.
And also the camshaft needed replacing as well.
Exactly. It's been teaching me lessons since Ken's passed, and I'm learning. But yes, recently the camshaft broke, which is not unusual, and we've done very well for it not to fail before this. But crankshaft, the camshaft was worn right down, the secondary lobes were non-existent, and new valves, etc., clutch, and even a new starter motor, because when we put that one back in again, the one that Ken had fitted, because it's smaller to allow for the supercharger to fit in, that failed. So it doesn't need very much boost for it to operate really well, but just certainly transforms the car.
Now, Marianne, this is not the only classic car in your garage.
No.
You've also got this beautiful Amilcar here.
Certainly, Alex. It's really been so much a part of my life since '89, as you know. It's been through hell and high water with me and kept me sane a lot of the time. But it's a special car, and to see the difference in the transition of machinery from 25 to 47 is quite amazing. The Amilcar is quite agricultural to drive. It's a big, heavy car. In its day, it was an 80-mile-an-hour car, but I wouldn't like to be driving it at 80 miles an hour. But even though the bodywork has been changed to accommodate somebody who's 6 foot tall, it still is quite difficult to drive with the distances. I do need a pillow to drive it because otherwise I can't see over the dashboard and I can't reach the pedals. But saying that, a lot of fun to be out on.
Absolutely. Can you tell us that wonderful story about how the front end of the car was found and reunited to the car?
It's amazing the things that happen. Peter Mundy set about wanting to build up a sports car in his youth with the help of Max Foal. Some of Peter Mundy's buddies were travelling in the country, and the front assembly was hanging out of a skip bin that was due to go off to the scrap metal merchant the very next day. One of the mates said to the other one, "That looks like an Amilcar front end. Peter Mundy's looking for an Amilcar front end." And sure enough, even though it had a different hub welded to the front wheels, it was the front assembly from this Amilcar. And as with other things, it all came together again, and all the numbers match, which is just amazing.
So, Marianne, somebody's been graffitiing your car.
Funny you should say that. Do you remember the event at Caversham where Jack Brabham came over to open the new estate called Brabham? Well, he was very generous and signed externally on the Amilcar. So Jack Brabham left his mark on the car because apparently he had an Amilcar in his youth. Yes. And of course when he said that I thought, oh gosh, you know.
This is also a very rare car, isn't it?
It is. Apparently, from what we know and all of the history that's been written on the car, there's only 8 E-Series left anywhere in the world. And that's with the Amilcar register in England.
And it's housed in such a beautiful setting with so much memorabilia.
This is why I can call it my happy place,
Yeah,
Alex,
I can see
because
why.
the things that Ken and I did, we were only together 23 years, but we did more in those 23 years than some people do in a lifetime.
Looks like you used those years pretty well.
We did.
So Marianne, this is a very ornate looking trophy, but somewhat unceremoniously named Boughton's bucket.
You will remember Val and Ian Boughton, parents of Brett Boughton.
Yep.
They passed a few years ago now, and they were such important and respected members of the pre-war sports car club. Brett decided that he would donate a trophy called Boughtos Bucket, and I'm absolutely honoured to be in the company of Nigel Macon, Jim Runciman, Craig Atkins, and this year for me.
Well, I guess there's only one thing left to do.
Oh, would you like to come for a drive, Alex?
I would be very happy to go for a drive.
I'd be delighted to take you.
Sounds great, doesn't it? I really see what you mean about having a little bit more muscle. Doesn't quite feel...
There's no hesitation there at all. It just wants to go, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Get that sort of thing.
There's a celebrity around here.
Well, that's the thing, you know, you go out in a classic car and people look and smile. It's a nice thing to put a smile on somebody's face, isn't it? Lovely thing to be able to do.
So Marianne, I've got to ask you, are you a member of the RAC?
Yes.
And
absolutely I am.
How long have you been a member for?
Since I came to Perth, 1975.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
So come up for 50 years next year.
Oh, is it that long? Oh dear. And I have had to use the RAC. In fact, with this car, we were coming back from Margaret River area and we were on the freeway and we overheated in a big way. So we got a tow truck and he came all the way from Dwelling up through the RAC, and he was such a nice fellow. He was so obliging. He was delighted to be having a classic car on his tow truck rather than any old latest model. I couldn't even persuade him to stay for a cup of tea because he was on to his next job. But I actually wrote a thank you letter which the RAC published, which was nice. Yes.
Thanks very much, Marianne. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, my pleasure, Alex.
Great to be in an MGTC.
Yes, well, you've been in it a number of times in TCs.
Been in a few.
Yes, and we didn't need the RAC to bring us home this time.
Well, thanks so much for showing us your beautiful car, Marianne.
My pleasure, absolutely. It's been a wonderful morning and thank you very much.
We'll look forward to seeing you out on the road.
You will.